Hello. Today is Monday, March 31st. Welcome to episode 433 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Morgan Vina and Amy Mitchell, and NSI Fellow Jessica Jones. Today, we're heading to the Arctic, where one of America's most loyal allies is suddenly being cast as a problem, not a partner. Greenland, a vast resource-rich Arctic island positioned between North America and Europe, has long been a quiet cornerstone of U.S. defense strategy. During the Cold War, the U.S. operated 17 military installations. Today, just one remains, Pawtucket Space Base, a critical node for America's missile detection and space surveillance systems. But that longstanding military partnership is now at the center of a high-stakes diplomatic storm. The tensions began in 2019 when President Trump floated the idea of purchasing Greenland. Denmark's prime minister at the time called the idea absurd, and the crisis passed. Until now. It's 2025, Trump is back in the White House, doubling down, and again suggesting that military force is not off the table to secure Greenland for the United States. On March 28th, Vice President Vance visited Pawtucket and delivered a stunning rebuke of Denmark, saying Denmark has not been a good ally. He accused Denmark of underinvesting in Greenland's future and encouraged the island to consider independence, implying the U.S. would be a better partner than its own sovereign state. And the blowback was immediate. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen fired back, saying, "This is not how you speak to your close allies." And that statement carries weight because for decades, home to the largest July 4th celebrations outside of the US, Denmark has been one of the most pro-American countries in Europe. Militarily, diplomatically, culturally, few NATO allies have stood closer to the United States. That makes the current collapse in Danish public opinion towards the United States all the more striking and alarming. A new YouGov Eurotrack survey finds that just 20% of Danes now view the US favorably, one of the lowest ratings in Europe. A Ryan poll found 41% of Danes now see the United States as a significant or direct threat. Experts point to Trump's rhetoric, language some in Denmark say resembles Kremlin-style authoritarianism. Greenland's leaders aren't standing still either. 4 of the 5 major political parties have formed a coalition to resist U.S. overtures. And protests have erupted in Copenhagen, with people at the U.S. Embassy holding signs that read, "Back off, USA." Russia is reactivating Soviet Arctic bases and deploying advanced missile systems near Alaska. China is pouring money into Greenland's mining and infrastructure sectors. All that said, why is the United States targeting Greenland? Let's go to you first, Morgan. What is the actual objective here?
Sure, thanks,
Martha. Have military bases access. What's going on?
Thanks, Martha. So first of all, as I've said before on this pod before, 2 things can be true here, right? The first is that JD Vance is correct in that Denmark has underinvested in Greenland. To be clear, Russia is expanding its northern corridor or its Arctic corridor through the Arctic, and it is posing a severe strategic threat, frankly, to the United States and to our NATO allies. To that point, though, the United States' presence in Greenland has reduced significantly from World War II, right? We used to have 17 bases or military installations in Greenland. Now we're down to that one Space Force base. So the thing is that not only has the United States pulled back, but Europe has not, and specifically Denmark has not maintained its momentum and invested to the extent that, frankly, I personally feel it needs to in order to put up with the Russian bear and compete with those near peer partners. And so at the same time, though, Denmark is a NATO ally, right? The Greenlanders pose zero threat to the United States. And for us for this administration to use such bellicose language towards a NATO partner is perhaps unproductive, right? So I think there are opportunities here for the United States to engage. I think that Danish leadership has mentioned a 1951 agreement as an opportunity to actually beef up U.S. presence on the island, and I think we should certainly pursue that. we should also look at other opportunities. But I mean, I also, for what it's worth, I think a lot of hay has been made of a President Trump saying he's not going to take military force off the table in terms of U.S. engagement with Greenland. I don't really see that happening. Do I see a more robust U.S. military presence in Greenland in the future? Yes, but I don't see us overtaking the island by force.
Jess, Putin has talked publicly about Greenland. Does this, can you talk about what he said and, what should we make of it?
Perfectly timed. Putin was holding his own Arctic forum, what do you know, during Vance's visit. And he basically laid out the case for why President Trump has a claim to Greenland, right? He made the case for the U.S. historical claims to the island. And he basically told the Europeans, the Greenlanders and the Danes, he's not joking. President Trump is not joking, and that they might become part of the U.S., right? And he's laying that argument because it sounds a little familiar, right? It sounds a little bit like, oh, I don't know, Russia's claims on Ukraine, right? Basically, the powerful countries can take, if they have historical ties, can take what they want. He said that, when it comes to Greenland, that's an issue between two specific states, and has nothing to do with Russia. Basically, if you're not one of the parties involved, stay out, right? If it's between Russia and Ukraine, everyone else needs to stay out. And he then went on to say that Russia's developing a special investment fund in the Arctic, and that he proposed giving the U.S. a stake, whether it's rare earths, whether it's natural gas deposits. He is making the business case for President Trump to partner up with Putin when it comes to Arctic interest, right? And, there might be, there's a reasonable argument that, President Trump might be trying to create a wedge between Russia and China right now. Russia doesn't really have its own resource. It's depending on China to finance a lot of its Arctic projects. And why not rather have the U.S. help with Russia and change the relationship? But I think rather than see it like that, what I see is, a world where really anything is up for grabs, right? We're back now to territorial expansionism. Morgan brought up the 1951 agreement between the United States has. It could increase its military presence. That's what at least we're hearing from the Danish Prime Minister. It could increase the U.S. military presence on the island through a framework we already have, rather than make claims territorially to the island. So I think, it'd be interesting to see, when we talk about Panama, Canada, Greenland, laying claim to other lands beyond our borders, to Morgan's, does President Trump actually follow through with any of that, or is that just the bluff to get a better deal?
Mm-hmm. Amy, do Americans support this approach?
So thanks, Martha. And I agree with everything that Jess and Morgan have said. From a political standpoint, it's interesting that the president's taking this tact because the people of Greenland overwhelmingly, like 88%, do not support this. And conversely, the American people, a majority, do not support the U.S. taking Greenland. So you have to wonder what the president's political calculus is on this. And I've even seen comments from MAGA world going so far as to say, hey, 100,000 people move to Greenland and then we have a plurality and we can just vote. And so I'm waiting for Elon Musk now to offer, make an offer on Twitter or X or XAI, whatever he's calling it these days, to say, hey, I'll give you $500,000 to move to Greenland and then vote for President Trump. And seeing how many people, Americans, decide to take him up on that. But seriously, I think when it comes down to it, no one wants this deal except Trump and Putin, which does not bode well for global relations right now. And so I would say put us all out of our misery and just tell the Danes what you want. And let's move on. Let's move on to other issues in the world. The first being China, that the U.S. really needs to look at hard and figure out a strategy in the Indo-Pacific, figure out what's going on in the Middle East, and stop talking about Greenland. And I'll add Panama and Canada to that list too.
I'll agree with Amy here. Like the Arctic Riviera doesn't have like sort of the same appeal as like the Gaza Riviera.
I don't know more, it's funny whether we actually going for Greenland. I was looking at some of the headlines and there's some pundits out there really on, Fox News or normalizing our claims to Greenland and saying like, who cares if we piss off the Danes? Like they're nobody. This is what you do. And I'm like, oh my, is that where we are now? Getting ready.
Maybe they'll take that offer that Elon Musk is, I'm sure, going to make to move to Greenland, and we can have Fox News Arctic.
Yeah, well, aren't we, like, seriously, isn't this like really sort of just counterintuitive, right? I mean, all of these isolationists within the Trump administration like are now all about taking Greenland by military force. I mean, what is this?
Yeah.
The irony is really just chef's kiss.
Totally rich. Absolutely. Well, that is a wrap on that note. So thank you so much to Kelly Crowley, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, April 2nd, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast to get you smart, fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up not only America, but the world. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. And if you like what you heard, saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.